Okay, look, I know, again, I said it, I've been pretty hard on Gen Z, but here, Gen Z, our younger brothers and sisters, our children, I got your back on this one, okay? Now, when people talk cost of living these days, they always say inflation is so much and wages have never kept up, and a lot of people go, well, you're just not trying. Well, I thought I would break it down, just the basics, rent, utilities, food, and that's it. On when I went out on my own, with what the minimum wage was to what it is now, and the averages for the cost then to the cost now. And I also adjusted in the end again for inflation. Now, because it's really hard to nail it down with all the different states and some cities and the different rules, and everybody has a different minimum wage and it's all over the place, I went with the federal minimum wage when I first went out on my own in 1992 and the federal minimum wage now. And just the basics is, this is what it was, okay? So in 1992, federal minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. Now, if you worked a full 40-hour weeks, you get your 2 checks, that would be $680 a month. Now, when you adjust for inflation, that comes to $1,476.82 today. Now, my rent then was $250 a month. My utilities for the month were just $90. That only was like power, water, gas. That didn't include a home phone. That did not include cable TV. There were no cell phones. I mean, there were, but I mean, you sure as hell couldn't afford one if you were first moving out on your own. So that came to a total monthly expense of $440. Which left me then, real money in my pocket, $240 a month left over. And that was to if I wanted to have a landline phone, if I wanted cable TV, if I had car insurance, if I put gas in the car, going out to eat, going out to the bar on weekends. It wasn't a lot. Now, when you adjust for inflation, that $680 becomes $1,476.82 today. And the $440 in my expenses for rent, utilities, and food, which food was only about $100 a month. It was cheap. Comes to $955.59, which in today's money left me today $521.59 a month in my pocket after base expenses to live on anything else that would be considered an incidental, which would be phone, cable, going out, car insurance, gas, all that stuff. So let's jump ahead today, because I got you guys. I get it. Gen Z, the youngest millennials, it's rough, and I get it. But again, I'm working on averages here and going with the federal minimum wage. Okay, so the federal minimum wage is 2023 was $7.25 an hour. Personally, I think that's a little absurd, but that comes to $1,160 a month if you work full time. So if you're working full time at the federal minimum wage, average rent from 2023 around the country, all the district, everything, average rent was $1,181 a month. So you're already $21 in the negative just on your rent. Average utilities in 2023 for a single person renting a place was $133.04 a month. Now we're talking an apartment here. And food come to $415.53 on average. I know there's people that do less, and there's probably some people that spent more. But that comes to a total of $1,729.57. Now, if you were only living on minimum wage, like I was when I first went out on my own, and I had money left over in my pocket, in today's funds, a total of $521 a month in my pocket to spend after paying my base expenses to survive. Today, at minimum wage, you'll be in the negative every month, $570. You're $570 short of just base expenses. And that utilities doesn't include phone, internet, any form of cable TV, streaming services, any of that stuff. and you're already in the hole, $570 to the negative. Now, so then I decided to see, in order for you today to have those average expenses, this is averages here. I know your city might be way more, your city might be a little less, but to have the same spending money left over in today's funds as I did in 1992, you would have to make $2,250 per month to equal the same style of living that I did at minimum wage in 1992, which comes to $14 an hour. Now, there is 7 states that have a state minimum wage that will put you at that $14 an hour. So if you're in one of them 7 states, then you will have the same lifestyle at minimum wage as I did, making minimum wage in 1992. As for the rest of them, they're down there. You got states that have them a lower minimum wage. You have states that don't have no minimum wage. So the federal one applies. It's all in some cities, have different minimum wage in the city, in a large city, than they do in the rest of the state. So it varies. I had to work on averages. But when you look at that and you come and it's $14 an hour. No, look, I don't think that you can come in and think that you're going to get the same money doing the same job as somebody that's been doing that job for 20 years. That's not going to happen. That's called seniority. That's called tenure. That's called earning it and working there and earning the raises. Nobody started at that amount. They worked there for years to get there. However, I have no problem with you fighting for that basic. If you go in to go work somewhere and they say, oh no, we're only going to pay you $11 or $12, I have no issue with you arguing and saying that you want to at least start at 14 because that's the basic that you need just to live. Otherwise, it's not worth it for you to work there. We do have a problem with employers trying to underpay. We got employers, they use an excuse all the time. And there's this very unique situation that happened when we went through with everything that happened in 2020 and all that garbage. And there are a lot of companies, employers that took advantage. They took huge advantage of it because it allowed them to artificially inflate and boost inflation. Okay. Excuse me. It's changed a lot. There are companies that things cost way more than they should, and it's because they had the opportunity now that they created the artificial shortages, which ups the cost to you, but it's not upping the cost for them, and they are making massive profits. And there are some companies that aren't making any profits because they weren't big enough to manipulate things, and they're getting screwed over themselves. But going back to this with the wages, you want to argue for that bout, so you sit there and have that $521 after your base expenses. Now remember, out of that $521, you still got to pay. If you got a car, you got car insurance, you got gas, you go out on the weekends, you got a cell phone, you want internet, you're going to pay for, that's all out of that $521, just like all of that had out of that $521. So you would have to cut some expenses. This is just base expense. Rent, utilities, and food. This is all you need. Anything above that is just you're adding extras into your life because you want things to be a little easier, a little grander, a little more fun, and that is fine. But anything beyond those three, you're dipping into essentially discretionary funds. You can have way more discretionary funds than you think if you don't go out every weekend. You don't have to go out to the clubs on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You don't have to spend all that money. You don't need to go spending $3, $4, $5 for a stupid drink at Starbucks that isn't worth 25 cents. You don't need to go out and eat all the time. Don't order these Uber and skip the dishes and all that stuff when they charge you extra. When walk 2 blocks and buy the meal and save that few dollars, or go and buy the groceries and cook at home and save the money. Oh, I know, just another guy preaching, doesn't know how to live life in this world, and you don't understand it. No, I do get it, because I was out on my own for a long time, and It was tough getting by then. I mean, some things were cheaper then, but some things were way more expensive. There were things that were more expensive then than they are now, even when you adjust for inflation. Because their prices of technology has come down. Like if I wanted a cell phone then, all you got was basic call in, call out. There was no text messaging. You had to pay for your outgoing calls. You had to pay for incoming. It was only free after 7 or after 6 and on weekends. You know, you've had to pay for your calls as well. So you paid $60 a month for a phone and you had to pay for your calls. So some things aren't cheaper back then compared to today. But you can sit there and you can, if you can come in and you can make $22.50 per month, then you're making the same amount to pay these base expenses on average. Now, I'm not talking that's going to work for you if you're in New York and you're in LA or Chicago or Miami or, you know, Houston, Dallas, anywhere you get into big cities and the rules go out the window because you could be paying $2,000 a month for a room with a dirty mattress in order to live in. I've seen it. But when it comes to averages and the federal minimum wage is what I had to go by. But I get it. It is tough out there. And definitely, when everyone talks living wage, if you want to living wage it's a non-starter because it's not possible. Because the one thing the young people don't realize is if you're going to start everybody up and they like, everybody should make $20 an hour minimum, but then everybody else is going to get boosted up too. Because there always has to be a $15 an hour difference between me on a construction site and the guys below me on the construction site. Because you got pay scales in between people. So if they get boosted up and they get jacked up to 20 and they were making 15 before, well, then I'm going to get a $5. And it doesn't change anything for you. You have to cut some expense. You have to trim some fat. You have to realize that, well, maybe I can only go out to the bar once this month or save up for that $1,000 night out. But if you want to have it the way I did, we only had base expenses, rent, utilities, and food, and that gave me, in today's money, $521 a month for extra stuff, which would be car insurance, gas, a phone, cable TV if you wanted, but cable TV was so damn expensive it wasn't worth it. You know, that's the way it was. So you want to do that now, you got to make $14 an hour and get $22.50 a month, and that will give you the same $521 left over after rent, utilities, and food. But that doesn't include your cell phone, internet, or any form of cable TV or streaming services that everybody likes. That doesn't include paying for your music services that everybody wants on their phone now. See, it's not a matter of you need these things. It's a matter of you want these things. What's wrong with you collecting the music up and just loading the file in your phone and using your phone like an MP3 player? Why do you have to pay for a streaming service when you can get these songs and just collect them and have them in your phone? It's not that big of a deal. It'll save you money. If it saves you $9 a month, you cut out streaming services, it saves you a bunch of bloody money. I mean, you know, there's a couple good shows. Wait until all the shows are completely out. Pay your 1 month, watch everything, you know, and then dump it. You don't have to keep it every day. I mean, the reason they're releasing shows now one a week or 2 episodes a week when they create a series, it's because they're hoping that people aren't going to dump their service anymore and just get it for a month, binge everything, and then dump it. It's basic. But you can survive without going too crazy. It's not unreasonable for you to go with what would be an average to equate minimum wage and say 92. And the reason I picked 92 is because when I went out on my own, that was minimum wage. That's what I got. not for long. I mean, 6 months later, I got a better job and I was making $7.50 an hour. And yeah, that changed everything. And I had tons of money. And then, you know, a year later, I was making even more money. It just depends. You got to give it your shot. You go out there, you're not always going to get what you want to start, but you don't need to. Okay. You can come in, you can work a little less. And here's a simple thing. If you don't like the job and it doesn't pay, look for another one. But have some etiquette about it. Don't tell your boss you're looking for another job. Don't tell your coworkers that you're in the market for another job. You just quietly look for another job. And when you find it, give your employer notice. Tell them and tell the other ones and say, look, I'm working for these people and I would like to be very respectful to them and give them a couple weeks notice that I am going to leave. So can I start with you in a couple weeks? And they say, yes, give the notice and do your notice, because you never know if you have to go back to that employer for another job. And if you turn around and just bail overnight for your new job, they're not going to take you back. Because believe you me, when it comes right down to it, employees, a single employee does not hold that much power against the employers. They talk about now that, oh, it's a time. Well, no, if the employers just don't hire any of you, none of you are going to have any money. And then you'll be begging to come back for less money because you're hungry. Everyone's getting evicted. And you go, well, the employer's going to hurt too. Yeah, but it's going to look a lot worse when there's no products on the shelf for you to buy and you have no money. I mean, the company will hold out. They'll just declare things are a certain way. Banks will loan money. Then you guys will come back and you'll spend. And here's the biggest tip to you young people: do not live on credit. Absolutely not. I mean, have a credit card, use it periodically to build a rating, but do not live on credit. Put a little bit away, a little bit away, a little bit away, and then buy what you want. You know, that was the biggest difference between now and before, when they talk about, well, people bought this so cheap. Yeah, but there wasn't credit. Okay, sometimes you would get personal credit with a individual store owner, and you would have a good personal credit with them, and they would let you run an account at their individual store. And usually if you did that, you had to pay that account $0 every month, and it would be a grocery store, or sometimes it would be a mechanic shop, gas station, or a lumber or a hardware store. They would let you run an account. But you didn't take advantage of it, and you didn't live on credit because there wasn't any. People saved and then bought their item. You see, but when they shifted to this 100% consumerism, they had to have credit because people had to keep buying. And once you're in that, you're never getting out of it. But if you save, like I have an uncle, you know what? Video's too long. Story for another time. Maybe we'll talk about that on the live stream on Saturday. But until then, this is Drac saying, I'll talk to you later. Have an excellent weekend, everybody. And until next time, peace out.